welcome. If you're out in the lobby, come on in for this extraordinary Q&A.
Gosh, I wish I could do that still.
I want to introduce the
Don't say it.
incredible Charles Tyson, who is going to be doing this interview with these amazing artists. And we're just trying to switch it up so that you don't hear from me constantly, and we hear from this incredible artist right here. So, Charles, take it away.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to the Wilma Theater. My name is Charles Tyson Jr. I am the host of Philadelphia Dance Talk Radio, podcast by PhiladelphiaDance.org. And also, I hope you got to hear the interview I did with Nicolo and Christine this morning on CityCast Philly. We talked about the wonderful things that are going to be taking place tonight. I'd like you to welcome to the stage choreographer Nicolo Fonte, lighting and set designer Michael Korsch, and costume designer Mark Eric. The dream team, as it were. So I got to see a little bit of the piece. I made myself stop because I wanted to save a little something. But I have to tell you that you are all in for a huge treat. This is a wonderful work. Nicolo, talk to us a little bit about what we're going to see this evening.
Yeah, really. Well, hi everyone. I'm Nicolo. I'm the choreographer. So what you're going to see, I can answer that question in many ways. But essentially, I think we're going to see an adaptation of Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, the book written by him in 1922. I just want to preface that by saying it's not an actual literal sort of page to stage kind of work. I take some artistic liberties and stuff, but it's pretty faithful to the story. But it's an adaptation, and I felt like it was really a beautiful story, and a story that impacted so many lives. In the 60s and 70s, it had a huge impact on the counterculture revolution in this country, even though it was written in 1922. I had read it in college, and I really loved the message in the story. But more importantly, when I reread it, I really felt that it lent itself to movement. There was so much imagery in the book that really allowed me to imagine dance scenes when I was reading it. So what you're going to see is that.
Nice.
Yeah.
The words that came to mind when I saw a bit I allowed myself to see were dynamic and theatrical. What were the challenges of translating a book to dance on the stage?
Well, I think I sort of answered that a little bit in my sort of introduction of what we're going to see tonight. I think you have to have the imagination to do it. You have to sort of see it somehow, and you have to have a point of view, an approach that you want to do. And that could be like literal page to stage kind of thing, or you sort of imagine it in a different way. Like, for example, one of the liberties I took is that I just decided I did not want to set the ballet in India. It's a rich culture that I don't have enough knowledge about. So I set the ballet in a kind of anywhere world, and it could be anywhere, anytime, but that also allowed me to tap into the universality of the story, which is a story of spiritual transformation, right? And that's a quest that Siddhartha, I call him Sid in the ballet, goes on. So one of the big challenges is the book is really about concepts. It's like, he is constantly trying to rid himself of his pesky little ego, right? But in the book, the ego is the concept of your ego. In the ballet, it's a character. And so I had to develop a character out of this sort of abstract idea of what an ego is. And that was tricky. That was tricky because it could really have gone awry. Like maybe I didn't accomplish it, and maybe some of you may think I failed, but I don't think so. So that's that. So those are some of the challenges in taking a literary work and then trying to make it into dance. Because when you're reading a book, in a lot of ways, your imagination can just roam, and you can interpret it. And in some ways, I have to do that for the audience as the creators, like all of us do. We have to create those images and those scenes that reveal what I think this scene should be about. So it's not the same thing as reading a book, because you can just let your mind go crazy and imagine whatever or interpret it in any way you want. And of course you can do that with dance, but it's a little bit different in this kind of work because it's a narrative work. So we're telling a story. It's not an abstract work.
Nice. Yeah, and that's the thing, you have to create an entire world, giving away as much or as little as your personal interpretation will allow.
I mean, one of the great things about doing narrative work, I think, is it's a different kind of process from doing an abstract work, but like I think you guys would agree, is that everything is in service to the narrative. There can't be anything really superfluous, you know? So even, you know, every single costume, every single move of the set, every idea that I want to transmit to the audience is in service of this whole idea of the narrative. How is it serving the narrative? Is it helping the narrative come across? Whereas if you're making an abstract work, sometimes you have a little bit more leeway in kind of saying, well, I don't care, I want blue because I want blue, and that's it, right? And then you accept it or you don't. And with a narrative, you really are trying to be as faithful as possible to conveying the story. So, and that's another challenge, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned the use of character, and I noticed one of the characters that, you know, many people might not include as a character, but that is the set. And Michael, I wanted to, first of all, give you props coming from Temple to you. But I was impressed with the set, and I said to you backstage it was deceptively simple because the set puts in work. Talk to me a little bit about what went into the creation of the set and how it contributes to the world of the piece.
Right, well, when Nicolo and I first started talking about this, there were a few things that we really focused on. One was the fact that there are 11 scenes in this ballet that we needed to at least suggest we were going to. We didn't have an interest in trying to create realistic looking scenes of each of these places. We wanted kind of a seamless way to go from one scene to the next, and also have kind of a neutrality about the look of it as well. Like, there's nothing that you will see tonight that makes you say, oh, this is that, or this is where we are. You know, it's not a specific identifiable structure. Well, there are essentially two scenic elements. One is a structure that is able to reconfigure to help define the stage and support what Nicolo wants to do choreographically. When we first started speaking, as I mentioned, going from scene to scene was a concern, but also one of the first things Nicolo said was that he wanted different levels, to be able to put the dancers at different heights. So, and also, again, maintaining this kind of undefinable look to the whole world that we were in. We ended up going with, well, thinking about that and how we're going to do all these shifts with either dancers or stagehands and getting these different levels. I started thinking about a structure that might be able to reconfigure. So we ended up with a series of, how much should I say about this? How much do I want to say? Yeah,
let's just do the show now.
We're trying to determine how much we should really give away here, but let's leave it as it's a structure that is reconfigurable to help establish these different scenes that we're going to, and the other element to the scenery is a backdrop, which is also abstract, but it has painted texture that again is not meant to be anything specific. It could be taken as a sky or water or just energy, and also to give a sense of depth and a feeling of infinity. and a sense of a journey. So this whole production is about a journey, and everything about the set and the lighting, really wanted to help convey that sense of a journey, while also giving Nicolo options for choreographing, different ways to use the space, to fill the space with his choreography to help tell the story.
It's funny because, when I was putting my notes together and I knew I was going to be speaking to you about the set, I know different aspects of theater, but set design is not really my bailiwick, so I started thinking about, all the ways I've seen it used in dance, and I wrote that, set in dance is either completely practical, you're climbing on it, dancing on it, exists to ground the work in reality, or the opposite, remove it from reality. And darn it if your set didn't check all those boxes in the same work, so good job.
I just wanted to add, if I can, I mean, one of the really interesting things about working with a set and something like this that's modular and transforms on stage, it may seem freeing, but in fact, it can be very limiting. It kind of limits your possibilities, and within that limitation, if you're really rigorous, it actually comes right back around to being totally freeing, because you discover so many possibilities, like you're constricted by what you can do, and so the creative way of figuring out how to resolve that problem is really a wonderful part of the process. Every process has to have some conflict, and that's one of them, like figuring out, I wanted this set, now I'm stuck here, what do I do? And it's like, oh, this, and then, so, you can't just do whatever.
Be
right?
careful what you wish for.
Yeah, but I think that's another that little bit of conflict creates a wonderful dynamic in the process, and I think in the result.
Indeed, I love it. And another prominent character in this work is the fabulous costuming. So, Mark, talk to me a little bit about what went into creating the personalities of the costumes.
Hi everyone. When Nicolo and I came together, starting our process of developing the costumes, he had already met with an artistic collaborator, a dramaturg, Nancy Meckler, and they had actually mapped out sort of how the ballet was going to run, scene by scene, and they had kind of a clear idea, which was very helpful, of sort of the vision of the ballet. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me is that they wanted to set it in kind of a timeless, placeless sort of environment, which kind of was exciting in one way, but also like challenging to figure out how I could tether my designs, because I think of the disciplines in the artistic collaboration, the costumes sort of hold most of the weight of informing the audience, the time, the place, the class of the people who are on stage. So it was quite challenging, I think, in the grand tradition of story ballet, the sets and the costumes and the 30 dancers you have at your disposal to help tell the story was sort of boiled down to our tight-knit group of 14 dancers who, we have over 50 costumes in the production, so that's an average of like 5 costumes per dancer. So there's choreography going on stage, there's choreography going on backstage, all the costume changes and that sort of stuff. But I mean, creatively, in terms of like a point of view, I think we just dove into it, really, and just started with Siddhartha, the main character, and try to like build it out from there. Like process-wise, it was also a journey. We had to kind of see things, and we even got to the point with some of the characters where we made some of the costumes and we still felt, oh, maybe this isn't right, and so there were still changes that happened after our first premiere out in Vail. But I think in general, I divided the costumes sort of in the real realm, so the characters who play humans, and then sort of this layer of fantasy characters. There is like a ferryman in the ballet, and he represents an actual ferryman in the book, but he also has sort of this symbolic meaning within the context of the book. So it's sort of like, how do we convey to the audience that this is like a mystical character? And those are some of the challenges that we really worked on, trying to figure out how to express it. So I think in the ballet you'll see sort of a more humanistic approach to some of the characters, and then you can kind of tell we were playing with some of the symbolism and metaphor that exists in the text of the book in the fantasy sort of presentation of some of the characters.
I love it. Yeah, I used the word personalities before because I feel the costuming is successful in that you can see a little bit of what's going on with the characters before they even move, just based on what they have on. That's perfect. And I said backstage I was coveting your earrings. I didn't see the boots when I said that. So one other element that I have to comment on for the work, because A, it's fabulous, and B, it's near and dear to my heart, as it's also part of my trade, is the lighting design. So Michael, talk to me a little bit about the process of creating the mood with the lighting, which is a very, very big part of dance.
Yeah. Well, first, it's, lighting designers in dance and theater, we're really responsible for how everything and when everything is revealed, and also for we're setting the atmosphere and the mood of the environment, helping to sculpt the dancers, helping to direct focus of the audience to what's important at any given moment. And, in this ballet in particular, actually, it's everything I'll give a little more away. The tones of the scenery are all very kind of grayscale neutral, so all of the color comes from lighting in the environment. So I'm essentially painting with light. The dancers, the scenery, the backdrop, and establishing, we really established this world and helped to tell the story, but also at the same time, this is also something that I think we were discussing from the beginning was, it's a story ballet, but we also want to make it interesting looking and have an edge to it from a contemporary dance standpoint as well. So we kind of, that was a bit of a challenge, making sure that we focused on moments that got the story across clearly, but also really sculpted the dancers and made it dramatic at other moments. And finding that balance it wasn't difficult, but it was just something we really had to pay attention to. So.
Right, because with lighting design, you don't want to notice it unless you do want us to notice it.
And it's not like a Broadway show. We're not like, here's this character, and try to do it pretty subtle.
I mean, I think you and I talked about it a lot, and we really, had to devise a plan because, we're, both living artists in 2023, and, and we have done lots of more abstract contemporary work, and now we're embarking on this sort of other kind of ballet, yet I wanted it to have, like you said, an edge or some sort of, moments of real, sort of maybe an unusual touch that's not so straightforward, that it's not just about revealing the action. And a lot of it was about, we need to see their faces, because it's a lot about acting, and so they're also acting in the ballet. So to sort of find that balance and to sort of decide which scenes were more sort of edgy, or like you could, in some ways force a point of view across, like we don't need to see their faces, it's all choppy and shadowy and really, kind of very cool looking. We had to decide together like how that would develop. So it's really been an interesting, really, really interesting process. And I just want to say that, sorry, I tend to take over, but sorry, they're used to it. I've been sort of on a mission, or a little bit on a crusade, even with like contemporary ballet, and I've just sort of, my thing is, I've been part of that whole sort of edgy dance world for years, and I just got really tired of it, and I just wanted to sort of create joy, and I just wanted to make something that's absolutely joyous and joyful, and that we can move like contemporary beings and edgy and cool, but we can also smile and share that with each other on stage and share that with the audience. And so back to your first question, what are we going to see tonight? I think it's a really great, big, fun, joyous ballet, entertaining, something for everyone.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So now we've come to the point of the evening. I didn't do this last time because I got so caught up in talking to the artist, where we open up the floor to the audience. If you have any questions about dance, lighting, costume, life in general. Don't be shy. Yes.
Question about the relationship between the set designer and the lighting designer. Being the same person. When I heard you say one is all grayscale, so all of the color is produced by the other, is that expressing a preference you have for one over the other, or is that simply what was working for this?
I think you should repeat the question. I think those people in the back probably didn't hear it.
He was asking if, as the set and lighting designer, the choice was to go grayscale with most of the scenery, and if that was my preference typically, or just, for this production for sure. Just because it gave us, we weren't locked into any color or any, again, identifiable moment or texture, so that we had full freedom to add texture to it, color to it, or not add any color to it at any given time. And it, so it's being such a neutral tone, it takes color. It was the ability to color it is infinite versus like having to think about how, if I had color that was permanently painted into the scenery or the backdrop, it would be a little bit more limiting for what we needed to do. Here, having to go to so many different environments, I think if it was more of a, if we knew that this whole production was going to take place at night or outdoors or in one specific location at a couple times a day or something like that, it would be more, I'd be more inclined to add color to it to really help to get more specific to that environment. But because we were really trying to go to different environments, and again, not make any of these places that we're going that specifically identifiable, that's kind of what we went with neutral. So.
Yes.
Question for the costume designer. Your choreographer said that really trying to kind of take this out of a place, not make it feel, and the set also really does that as well. That what we're going to see is kind of not in a specific place, not in a specific time. Outside you have your sketches, which are gorgeous and also clearly connect to the Indian culture. And I think also was mentioned, maybe not feeling, from the choreographer's standpoint, not feeling like you knew enough about it. So how did you approach bringing the cultural element to this? Because to do Siddhartha without it, I think maybe downplays what it is and says then it's, that the culture isn't important, but certainly you have to play a balancing act with doing it in a respectful way. So how did you address that in your costuming?
That's a good question. I think, it's something that we were grappling with until we kind of came here into Philly. His question was sort of, the prompt from Nicolo was to sort of, and Nancy, was to set it in this timeless, placeless environment. But, Siddhartha is clearly a story about India and the culture and a religion. And so, I tried to pay respect to the culture. Yeah.
Sorry.
You can
I don't know if it's about religion, but I could talk about that after. When
Sure,
you finish.
sure.
And then,
I guess like the Buddhist philosophy, maybe I can say that, at least from my perspective. And so I tried to kind of just delve into as much research as I can and take in modern research, modern inspiration that was sort of like in the top of my mind, but also kind of incorporate some maybe like Eastern aesthetics, Indian aesthetics, and try to like make kind of a melting pot, respectfully incorporating and not appropriating, you know, like kind of the Indian culture, because like myself, I'm also not part of the Indian culture. I've been an admirer of it for as long as I've been doing my work. So I'd say I tried to be very light-handed with taking sort of inspiration from India and sort of like Far Eastern cultures and sort of like sprinkle it in a little bit, sort of as an homage to its origin and where it came from, but also like incorporate Western aesthetics, things like inspiration that we took off like last year's runway, you know, and stuff like that. Just so there's like kind of a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of something there for everyone, and that's sort of, I guess, the approach that I take.
Yeah, if I could chime in, yeah, because I think, you know, the issue of appropriation was a challenging one, you know, and again, I don't think the book is really about religion specific or a specific religion. It's really about Eastern philosophy in general. It kind of blends bits of Hinduism, bits of Buddhism, and kind of explodes it open in a way. And you know, Hermann Hesse is a German guy writing about India in 1922, and so because the philosophy of that culture impacted his life so that he wanted to write a novel about it, or like a kind of poetic prose, you can say the book might be. But again, so we really did want to just strip it, not necessarily completely of its cultural identity, that's not what the intention, but it was to sort of crack open the universality of the message of the story, that it could be anyone, anywhere. You didn't have to be from a Brahmin family to go through what Siddhartha goes through in the book. It could be anyone, because the spiritual quest for spiritual transformation is open to all of us, the whole planet, right? Every human being can go on that journey. So that for me was the essence of it. But however, I also did like the idea of somehow having some sort of influence in there of Eastern sort of cuts and draping, you know, literally like, you know, fashion speak. You know, we were looking at like last year's collections and the influences that Indian culture had on the collections, and then how are we going to abstract that and make it work in this context. So yeah, it was really to get to the universality of the story, to get to the message that I wanted to create it in a kind of nowhere land. It could be anywhere. So
I guess like approach-wise, I took a lot from that as well, and sprinkling sort of all of these references was sort of like leaving breadcrumbs for anybody in the audience to kind of find themselves within the story and within the character and sort of relate to it in that way, which I think it sort of worked out in a sense that we kind of mixed it all together and it kind of became this universal presentation aesthetically.
Wonderful. These are some good questions. Can we squeeze in one more? Yes, please.
I'm going to assume that 50 plus 1 of the audience has not read the book, has not heard of the book, couldn't pick Hermann Hesse out of the lineup. I bought my ticket, I'm sitting in my seat. Am I diminished seeing it? How do you deal with that?
So the question is, he said maybe 51% of the public will not have read the book. And so he's here, or even heard of the book, or know who Hermann Hesse is. So he bought his ticket and he's here, and is his experience going to be diminished having not read the book? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think I've done a good job telling the story, but you may not agree with that. You may think that there are gaps in the story, but you know, any dance work, whether it's a narrative or an abstract work, or it's going to have very different ports of entry. And if you can't tap into the drama on the stage, or even identify with anything that's happening on the stage, or you can't relate to the music or the costuming, then I failed miserably. You know what I mean? Then that's a failure. I mean, total failure. But there are many ways to sort of come into a work. And I think that My job, I can talk about philosophy, and I can talk about Eastern philosophy, and I can talk about spiritual transformation and all those things. But my job tonight is a choreographer. So what does a choreographer do? He makes dances. And what do dances do? They communicate joy, poetic lines, and all that stuff, right? And choice of music. And the music is the bridge between what's happening on stage and what you're experiencing in the audience. So there's all that element to it as well. But I do think I tell a good story.
Mark. So, Nicolo, Michael, and Mark, thank you so much for sharing this evening. Thank all of you for taking the time to share this time with us. And you are in for a treat, let me tell you. So we will see you shortly. Thank you very much.